Hi, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining me today for this informational session about the 40 MFC certification program through 40 Fit Mental Fitness. My name is Scott Mickish. I am the founder and mental fitness instructor with 40 Fit. I'm also the author of My Brain Can't Poop, a mental fitness guide for humans. If you've heard of that or want to look it up, we'll talk a little bit more about that later as far as resources and materials that you'll have access to as a 40 MFC professional. So this program specifically is designed for professionals looking to enhance their skill set, add to their toolkit, and really to broaden your knowledge base about brain health, mental function, and neurodiversity so that whoever you are servicing and providing leadership or assistance to empower people to feel and do their best. And of course, as you learn, everything also applies to you as an individual. So hopefully you will learn some new understandings, practices, and skills and tools that you can use for yourself to really feel and do your best as you're servicing and providing assistance to others. So specifically, if you are a healthcare provider, if you work in the mental health field, if you are a health or wellness coach, a teacher, a business leader, a personal trainer, this is the program for you. So many people from different backgrounds are coming to get this knowledge that really applies to our personal and professional lives in so many ways that we'll go through in this presentation. So you really understand what's in the program and what the benefits are. All right, to start, I like to just introduce myself with a picture of me as a kid. This doesn't have my younger brother on it, but this is my older sister. So this is us sitting on a pumpkin. And I use this picture because this really represents what we are facing, especially as adults. So from childhood through our entire lives into adulthood, that nervous system that's developed, that we were born with, that has been impacted by all of our life challenges and struggles, and influences from our nutrition to our environment to our genetics, that is with us our entire lives. So that little kid there sitting on the pumpkin, that nervous system, other than the physical shell having changed, what's inside there is still inside of me. And your child self is still inside of you as well, as it is for all of us. So it's really a matter of understanding what is our nervous system and how does it develop and how can we take care of it and what are we really working with as adults, because all of that we were born with is still something we need to manage as we get older as well. And this will make a whole lot more sense to you as we go through the program today. So another takeaway that I am really on a mission to challenge is our notion of fitness. So quote unquote fitness, what does that mean to you? Unfortunately, probably to our detriment, fitness has really been monopolized by physical fitness. So a lot of times it's limited to biometrics, to how we look, to how we physically move, how we physically perform. And that can come with a lot of health consequences, with judgments and values put on how somebody physically appears and how somebody physically performs. We're very competitive. We compare ourselves a lot to other people too, based on their physical accomplishments, based on their physical appearance. So this really manifests in a lot of ways that is a detriment to our mental health and well-being. So I am really challenging our notion of fitness, that fitness is really about thriving in life with the abilities that you have. And one of those abilities is seeking the support and resources that you need to feel and do your best, that there is no shame in that. And so this really gets at, again, neurodiversity, but even, including people with disabilities in the diversity spectrum, that can, again, range from neurological differences to physical differences to mental differences to cognitive differences. So not just physical abilities, we're talking about the whole human being and what abilities we're working with. Stephen Hawking, an astrophysicist, diagnosed with ALS around the age of 21 and lived into his 70s. And that is in large part because he had access and resources to make the most of his limited abilities, limited physical movement. I think he just had slight fluctuation in his eyes and found technologies and resources that helped him communicate with just the minor physical abilities he had, because his mental abilities were still there. He was still a brilliant mind. He was still able to think and conceive, but it was how he was able to express himself that was his limitation. And he found the support and resources he needed. Obviously, having access and resources to afford support is absolutely essential and critical. So that, in the bigger picture, is really what we're challenged with, is how to make access to these essential support systems affordable and accessible. And mental fitness is one avenue for that. So really getting out ahead of any sort of crisis, being proactive, focusing on prevention, focusing on management and maintenance. That's really the focus of mental fitness. So when we differentiate mental health care from mental fitness, you'll see some of that understanding come out in this presentation as well. One of the other factors is from our psychological influence. So marketing and media and the images and messages that we're influenced by, that are targeting our minds, they're targeting our decisions, they're targeting our perceptions, trying to influence attitudes and behaviors. Unfortunately, one of the significant journals and magazines and promotional pieces for mental health is Psychology Today. And I went back and did an audit of the past few decades, and in large part, the vast majority, I would say 99% of the covers, are model-esque younger white women that could be Cosmo. And actually, I think Cosmo probably has more diversity reflected on their covers, quite frankly. So they're obviously targeting a certain demographic in their marketing. Inside, the articles are a little more diverse and have a little more heart and significance to them. But the covers and the marketing is very disturbing from the aspect of this is influencing how we see ourselves, how we see each other, and how we really interpret mental health and well-being. And that this sort of image really doesn't represent the broad spectrum of diversity and of people that really need to be targeted and helped and empowered through mental fitness and mental health practices. So we've got a ways to go, but this is just a very clear illustration of what's been influencing us and why we have some of the challenges that we have. One of the big focuses that I focus on in my mental fitness practice and trainings is neurodiversity. So this is really getting at, under the skin, what's driving our behaviors neurologically, neurochemically, and that we are as diverse neurochemically, neurologically within our brain, within our body, as we are on the outside, our external biology and our external body. So really understanding and thinking deeper and raising awareness about the drivers of behavior, and really being about brain health and mental function, and understanding how that can be diverse across different people. That is not an aspect to shame or blame people, but really to raise awareness and understanding, so that we can allow people to have the resources, have the support that they need to feel and do their best. There is not one size fits all. So, we tend to think that every brain maybe is the same and everyone should respond and react in the same way, and that's just not the case. So really understanding neurodiversity is a big part of mental fitness as well. And what are those factors within neurodiversity? So we're talking about genetics, we're talking about body chemistry, blood flow, nutrition, living environment. So the environment around you, your work environment, your life experience, the information you're consuming. So again, from marketing and media, and that information that you are consuming every moment of every day, how is that influencing your neurochemistry and your neurological activity in your brain? Your social relationships, huge influence, family, friends, social connections, the quality of sleep that you get, and amount of sleep that you get, access, again, a big variable. So what is your access, whether where you live, whether it's finances, whether it's physical abilities, and the last one being their abilities as well. So those are influences and aspects to consider when really trying to figure out what are the best practices, what is the best mental fitness approach to allow somebody to feel and do their best within their abilities. So we really need to look at many factors and many influences that just frankly are not being talked about and discussed quite at the level that they should be. So that's what this program is about, to help you be an advocate, to get you the 40 MFC certification, that you can have this conversation and raise awareness with other people as well. That's the mission and intent of this program. So the 4 key questions for you to take away and that we'll cover today are: why get certified? So I talked a little bit about that in the intro. The benefits and cost of the certification program, how to get certified, so what are the steps, and then a general overview of the 40 Fit Mental Fitness model, the 40 Fit Mental Fitness program, so that you have an understanding of the type of information and tools and resources that you'll receive through the program. So why get 40 MFC certified? So again, this is about updating your knowledge base. A lot of this information is scientific research. It just has not really been delivered in an accessible and practical way yet. That is really the mission of mental fitness, is to use the scientific research that we found that has changed. It's new, since the 1960s. That was really when neuroscience became a department of education at the first university. I believe it was UCLA. But it's only been since the 1960s that we've really started to dig into the neuroscience of mental health, of brain health. And there are still a lot of outdated theories that obviously were a step in the right direction, but they didn't tell the whole story. There's a lot that we didn't know. There's a lot that we still don't know. And it's really updating our knowledge base to what we know now, so that we can build on that and not continue to go backwards with old, outdated theories and beliefs in how things should be, and really understanding how they are. So enhancing your skills and toolkit with that knowledge, broadening your reach. So again, understanding neurodiversity, being able to speak a language and help people understand themselves in a way that is non-threatening, that is non-judgmental, that is culturally sensitive. You will be able to reach more people and really empower more people in your community, in your field as well, that will lend to advancing your career. So this is really, again, a knowledge base, a stepping stone for you to enhance what you already know, what you already have, what you're already doing, and to increase your effectiveness. So leading by example. The knowledge that you have now are practices for you as well. And we are social animals. And so one of the biggest behavioral influences is from a role model or others representing and reflecting certain behaviors, certain ways of being that allow others to believe in themselves and see themselves in that light and learn wellness practices, to learn health practices. So by you being more educated and more aware of brain health, mental function, and neurodiversity, you can then reflect that in your own practices. That will be an influence, a healthful influence for others. So as an effective leader. All right, the benefits of certification. So this is a brand new program. You will be one of the first cohorts to go through the program. It was just launched this year in 2022. And the introductory rate right now is at $400. So that's for 2 years of qualification for the certification in the program, that you will continue to have access to the benefits and tools and materials that we'll go through. So $400 is an introductory offer. That the value is really more around $800, and that's even pretty low when it comes to a certification course. So but in the spirit of making this accessible and affordable for people, I really want to start low and figure out where is that sweet spot so that people can really access and gain the knowledge that they need. So that $400 introductory offer will be this year for the first couple of cohorts that help launch the program. Then the professional promotions that will be tied into it, we will have a listing on 40fit.net of an affiliate directory. So that's where you will have your photo and a brief bio posted so that you can network, people can find you in your specialty, that I can reach out to 40 MFC certified professionals who might have expertise in different fields. So as I'm working with clients, I might reach out to those in the 40 MFC network to provide more specialized instruction or care in certain areas, and also being featured on social media. So as people join the team, get 40 MFC certified, I will definitely, post your profile, raise awareness about who's been 40 MFC certified, where the affiliate directory is, how to find these people with these very valuable and unique specialties and knowledge. So social media will be part of that benefit of being certified. And you can also petition for continuing education credits. So if you have a professional certification or license that you need to maintain with CEUs, every year I am in the process right now with the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaches to get certified. So if you're in that area, you won't have to necessarily jump through the hoop of petitioning for the credits. That'll be pre-certified. But it's so far, it's like that with every specialty area. So if you have a specific field where you think it would be helpful for 40Fit to get certified through your board, so whether that is personal training, I'm also looking at the National Association of Sports Medicine. And, you know, if there's also psychological affiliates and boards that, you know, receiving prior certifications will help you get your CEUs, let me know. But with most of those cases, there is a petition where if you have the material, you have the curriculum that you went through and it meets certain criteria, that you would get CEUs for attending this program too. So it's around 4 hours. So that would be 4 CEUs that we can talk about more. And then the renewal. So as I said, these benefits that I'll talk a little bit more about in the next slide too, that lasts for 2 years. And then if you want to renew your certification, your 40 MFC sort of membership with the affiliate directory, with kind of staying part of the community in that network to get the social media recognition, that sort of thing, then it would be a $200 renewal. So that's a 50% rate of what your initial introductory offer would be. And if you get in at the $400 introductory offer, then your renewal going forward would be $200. If you wait and the rate when it increases to $800, then the renewal would be $400. So it's basically 50% of whatever your original certification fee was. So you would save money on both accounts by getting in at this early stage. So those are some of the benefits, excuse me. All right, and then what's in the program? So what we will cover is, this will all be virtual and online. So again, making it accessible, reaching people where they're at. Hopefully that works for you. But the program itself is a month long, and that includes 1 hour sessions each week. So 4 1-hour sessions, training sessions, to cover the materials and basically the 40Fit mental fitness program, that how I work with clients, that I'll basically just be bestowing that knowledge onto you and showing you how to use some of these tools with your clients. So if you have, you know, employees, or if you are a coach, or if you're a trainer and working with people, that you can then learn how to use these tools in your practice. And again, you'll have access to those tools as long as you stay current on your certification. And of course, the knowledge never expires. So the knowledge that you build, that's yours to keep and keep learning. And obviously this program will continue to evolve as research and more science comes out too. So the benefit of maintaining that knowledge is power. Also access to the on-demand studio. So during that 2-year certification period, and whatever, as long as you maintain your certification, you'll have access to the on-demand studio. And that is online pre-recorded sessions of the 3 levels of the mental fitness program. So introductory, intermediate, and advanced, and then the downloadable PDFs and tools that we'll go through the certification process as well. So you'll have access to that on-demand studio to refresh, to use as a resource as needed. And then a copy of My Brain Can't Poop. So if you want a printed copy, this will cover the cost of a printed copy. It's also available in ebook format. If you have Kindle Unlimited, it's free. And then it's also I'm producing it as a podcast. So there's an audiobook version that's on most podcast platforms too. So if you can't find it, let me know, but it should be published and released on most podcast platforms. Say that 10 times fast. And then part of that program, those are all of your resources and information. So those are all the materials that you'll receive. And ultimately you'll take a final comprehension test. So this is 40 questions. It's all online again, multiple choice. And you can take this test as many times as needed to pass. But really, you know, this is about just reflecting what you learned and really knowing that you have the knowledge about brain health, just and basic brain health, mental function, neurodiversity to help educate and inform and raise awareness with others. And so there's the comprehension test that will earn your final certification. And after that, you will submit a claim form for your certificate, and it'll be in PDF format. You can post it on social media. You can print it out, hang it on your wall, put it in your album. That you will actually have a tangible certificate at the end as well. If I go back one, you'll see. So that's right behind my head here. So that certificate right there, you'll receive. Okay, so how to get certified. If you're listening to this online, if you're listening to this recorded video, you can go to 40fit.net and look under the brain trainings tab to the get certified option. And from there, you'll go to a page where there's a request form. So this is kind of a firewall, but it's also just a way to really ensure that this is the right program for you, that you will get the most bang for your buck, that you'll get the most out of this program for whatever profession or whatever skill set you have that you're looking to enhance and advance. So that request form will just ask a couple of questions about, what you're looking for, maybe what your background is, any question that you have, basic information. And then from there, you'll receive an email with the enrollment link. So that's where you'll be able to pay online, you'll be able to register online and get going in the program. We'll meet once a week. We'll determine the schedule once I have a cohort of people. So the cohort every month will be limited to around 10 people. And that's, again, with the request form. This is a way to kind of service those first come, first serve. So we'll have a cohort of 10 each month. And if you don't happen to make the month that you submitted your request form for, you'll be rolled into the next month to be part of that cohort. So we're really looking to launch the first cohort in August. So I have August 1st. That's not necessarily the first session date, but we'll coordinate based on the enrollment. And then going through the program, the weekly program, and then taking the certification test, claiming your official certificate, and then accessing the exclusive resources. So getting posted in the affiliate directory, getting featured on social media, having the chance and ability to network and connect with other 40 MFC certified professionals. I do anticipate having either networking opportunities or little events, either online or in person, kind of depending on where people are located, but really the opportunity for you to connect with others who are in the same sort of either sphere or really with a similar mission and direction in their work, that we can help support each other and use each other as resources as well. All right, and so why focus on mental fitness? You probably already have a pretty good idea just from being here today and really being curious and interested in being 40 MFC certified, but really it's about connecting the dots. So with mental fitness, we're really looking at connecting health and wellness with media and marketing, what's influencing our attitudes and behaviors, connecting with diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and justice, and whatever other tags are on that. I know people have different iterations of diversity, equity, inclusion, and really focusing on all of these efforts as our intent and aim to influence healthful attitudes and behaviors. That whether it's health and wellness, media marketing, diversity, equity, inclusion, we're really aiming at how do we help ourselves, each other feel and do our best to optimize our abilities to get out of life what we want. And this also has to do with stress and change management. So how do we navigate stress? How do we navigate change? Not all stress is healthy, unhealthy. Not all change is healthy, unhealthy. How do we differentiate healthful stress, healthful change from unhealthful stress, from unhealthful change? So how do we differentiate that, navigate that? And then leadership and achievement. So how can we be a healthful influence? How can we lead others? How can we educate others? And how can we really empower others to achieve their goals? How can we empower ourselves to achieve our goals and really make it a collaborative and communal effort? one of the factors that we'll go through, so this is part of the overview section, is really how to differentiate fitness from health. So again, mental fitness really being related to mental health, the same that physical fitness is related to physical health. And of course, it's all part of the same body and the same being, so it's all connected. So there's absolutely overlap and influence from physical and mental working with each other. So to differentiate fitness from health is really fitness is about those practices and abilities that allow you to thrive in your environment. So really being fit for your environment, adapting to your environment. Whereas health is really the state of your condition of being free of illness and injury. So when you say somebody is healthy, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're fit for their environment or fit to achieve a certain goal. So somebody could be perfectly healthy, but not have trained, not have the fitness level to run a marathon, for example. Somebody might be perfectly healthy, but not be fit, might not be trained to be the president and CEO of a financial institution, unless they have the experience and the background and all of the skills and abilities needed for that role. So really differentiating health from fitness. And then you get into the realm of what's a fitness practitioner versus a health practitioner. We obviously advocate for each other, but there's a big difference between a trainer, fitness trainer, fitness instructor, and a healthcare provider and a clinician. So the clinician and medical practitioner really looking at the health of the individual and then how to sustain that health would be through fitness practices and really looking at fitness professionals to help assist and support the well-being, the achievement, the success, and ability for that person to thrive. But that we're really advocating for each other. So I, as a fitness professional, am not a therapist, am not a clinician, and do not diagnose conditions, but I absolutely advocate for people if they are struggling in some way that seems it is more than what a fitness practice is going to help them navigate and overcome, then absolutely be advocating for that medical and clinical intervention and assistance to help people feel and do their best. So there you go, the differentiator there, that we're really aiming at influencing behaviors. So looking backwards, this is really what mental fitness is all about, is looking at what are the influences that are influencing our neurology, our neurochemistry, our mental function, our brain health, and what is that brain function that is processing those influences. So for different people, people can respond and react and process different influences in different ways. I use the analogy of peanuts, for example, from a physiological, physical perspective. Peanuts are really healthy unless you're allergic to them. So if you're allergic to them, they could kill you. So again, not everybody's physiology and neurochemistry are the same. And so really understanding how those influences impact our brain health and mental function, how we process them, and then the outcome and the output is our behaviors. So how do those manifest into our behaviors? And are those behaviors reinforced? Do they come with that little burst of dopamine, that sense of reward that make us want to do it again? Or does it come with a source of punishment, a rush of cortisol that puts us into fight or flight mode that maybe makes us scared or fearful of doing that behavior again? But that doesn't necessarily mean that we won't do the behavior again. We might just avoid punishment. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to do the healthy behavior because we haven't been rewarded and that hasn't been reinforced. So punishment, looking at punishment and the effects of reward and reinforcement and of punishment as well, just neurochemically, how do we reinforce those healthful behaviors from a neurochemical perspective? And the simplified version, just as it rolls off the tongue, is perceive, believe, achieve. So really looking at backwards, we have a goal that we want to achieve. Do we believe that it's possible? And what is our perception? So do we see the possibility? Do we believe that we can do it? And then do we take the steps to get there? So it really starts with that perception and the influences of our perception that leads us to taking those necessary steps to achieve whatever goal that we're trying to achieve. And understanding the driver of motivation. So in a healthful sense, motivation is influenced by the perception of possibility. So we see something as possible, whether it's through representation, through role modeling, somebody else sets an example. We see the possibility. We believe that we can do that too. We have this sense of trust. We have this sense of hope, of anticipating reward that motivates us, that gets our juices flowing. Unfortunately, a lot of times we're motivated by stress. So why is it so hard? A lot of times we might have a goal and we might even procrastinate. We might use the fear factor of wanting to be accepted, about wanting to achieve, and we wait for that stress to motivate us to get us into that fight or flight. So we get that rush of adrenaline, but really that's not sustainable, nor is it healthy for our nervous system to stay in that stress state. So the question is, how do we manifest and maintain a healthful motivation that keeps us motivated, but is a healthy state for growth and adaptation and recovery and resilience? So how do we get to a healthy state of motivation? And understanding the effects of stress on our system. So beyond just mental and psychological, stress and cortisol for extended periods of time, that chronic stress can affect our skin. It can affect our immune system, our hormone levels, our bone development, our bone growth, even related to osteoporosis, related to brain health, brain function, related to Alzheimer's and dementia, even related to heart disease, to hypertension. So heart health, gut health, your gut actually produces a lot of neurochemicals. So that gut brain connection is really important to have the proper nutrients to maintain your neurochemical balance. And then muscle is also down here as well. So again, just physiologically, the stress on your body really affects cellular growth, cellular development, and physiological and neurological activity. So understanding that mental fitness really is about maintaining your overall health and well-being, that is really kind of starting with that mental driver. And then the two parts of your brain that we focus on in the 40 Fit mental fitness model are really the amygdala and prefrontal cortex. So we'll talk about this in much more detail. The amygdala being the part of your brain, your unconscious stress response, your unconscious emotional nervous system, your autonomic nervous system, that is developed and with you since birth. And your prefrontal cortex, not fully developed until around the age of 25, and that's your higher functioning mature brain. So when the neurological signals are going to your amygdala, it basically takes energy away from your prefrontal cortex. And so the mental fitness goal is to optimize and energize your prefrontal cortex by navigating and regulating that stress response. And so the number of activities and ways that we can do that based on the individual and based on individual needs is part of the focus of mental fitness. Neurochemically, understanding the basic neurochemicals, we talk about the endorphins being pain relievers, serotonin being the influence of what makes you feel safe, content, cortisol being that stress hormone that triggers the fight or flight response, that triggers the autonomic nervous system, and then dopamine being that reward trigger that can reward an unhealthy behavior as much as a healthy behavior. And actually, oftentimes it's easier to reward an unhealthy behavior that might have a sense of instant gratification than a healthy behavior that may have a longer term delay on reward, and it's harder for our brain to process that. So really looking at dopamine and reward and how do you reward and reinforce the healthy behaviors is a big part of understanding mental fitness practices. And grief. So really understanding grief as your neurological process of adaptation to deal with a change, a significant change that at first feels like a threat or a loss. And this is a neurological process that your brain goes through to rewire and readapt to a state that used to maybe bring you pleasure and joy. And now that reality has changed and you have to figure out how to feel that sense of safety, of pleasure and joy again. And that can be a different process for different people, depending on brain development, depending on brain health, depending on that life circumstance. The intensity of the change can change with people too, but really understanding grief as a neurological process. And the outcomes of these neurochemical, neurological imbalances that can come out as that we can experience as anger, having a temper, losing our patience, getting depressed, feeling sad, all these different emotions that happen unconsciously in our nervous system. And part of that is because of that change and that imbalance in our neurochemistry in our nervous system that makes us experience those signals that we need care and healing. Differentiating adaptation from conformity. So this is a big one too. You heard me mention adaptation quite a few times, and really knowing that adaptation is the process of uh, rewiring, adjusting, optimizing yourself to your environment, to a change. So even if it's maybe an unhealthy change, adaptation is a process. So you don't necessarily just dive into it and poof, everything should be changed instantaneously. I liken it to doing the splits. So there's a practice of flexibility. You have to challenge yourself a little by little, and you don't stay in that uncomfortable position. So when people talk about getting comfortable with discomfort, you don't stay in the state of discomfort. That will cause neurological pain, imbalance, and injury. You do a little discomfort, you come back to comfort. You stretch a little bit further, a little more discomfort, and you come back to comfort. So really thinking of it as flexibility and as adaptation and adapting. Absolutely, it's the same with your nervous system and your neurology. Unfortunately, we confuse a lot of times embracing change as conformity. So we're really expecting people to conform to a change without allowing the proper time, practice, challenges to adapt. And we're insisting on demanding on change now. And this really is more of a process of conformity, of that stress level to avoid punishment, to avoid a threat. So when we feel threatened, we might conform to the demands of others in order to reduce that risk, reduce that threat. But that doesn't mean that we're optimized, that we're operating and feeling and doing our best. It just means that in our stress state, we are forced to conform with those demands. And so really differentiating adaptation from conformity. And we're really working towards adaptation. So we want you to feel and do your best with whatever sort of stress and change you're dealing with, and that requires support and understanding. So again, it's all about feeling and doing your best by embracing the challenge. So not necessarily embracing the change, because the change could be unhealthful, it could be toxic, it could be harmful that we want, but really embracing the challenge of figuring that out, figuring out, is it healthful? Is it unhealthful? How do you navigate it in a healthful way? How do you navigate stress, and how do you navigate that change? By embracing your humanity. So understanding your nervous system, understanding your brain, understanding the brains of others, and by caring for your brain and by caring for the brains of others again. This is really about understanding the neurochemistry, the inner workings of your mental function, of what drives your behavior, so you can optimize yourself and help others, empower others to optimize themselves. And the ultimate question is, what's influencing you? So with the 40 Fit mental fitness model, it's really mirrored from physical fitness practices. So again, neurologically speaking, the first level is balance. So really practicing awareness and understanding what is that foundational nervous system that's driving your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And knowing how your stress response, your autonomic nervous system works, knowing how your conscious mind and your prefrontal cortex work, and really kind of understanding how to find balance with the stress that you're taking on, with how you're feeling. And that's just a matter of awareness. So practicing and finding balance is the foundational, fundamental level of mental fitness. The next step is flexibility. So finding those practices that challenge you a bit. Again, take you to a little bit of discomfort, back to comfort, challenging you to go a little bit more of discomfort. So that could be playing games, that could be getting creative, learning a language, taking a class, having a challenging conversation, debating with a friend in a healthful way, obviously, but really challenging yourself in healthful ways that allow you to come back to a sense of safety and comfort, but that gets you accustomed and adapted to challenging yourself. And then the next level is rest and recovery. So this is when the growth happens. This cannot be a step that we skip. And we want to skip this a lot because, again, we're a very competitive culture. We shame people for putting the weight down, for taking a break. We find a lot of power in our strength, and we think that strength is holding that weight up. But part of building your strength is you have to let that weight down. So you have time for your muscles, for your nervous system, your cells, your physiology to recover, repair, and that's the process of adaptation. So that's when adaptation happens, that's when growth happens, that's when recovery happens. So rest and recovery is absolutely essential to developing your strength, to developing your resilience. And then strength and endurance is that top level. That again is about how to manage and maintain balance, flexibility, and rest and recovery. So your strength is knowing what your limits are, maintaining those healthful habits and practices for the long run, and maintaining your motivation. So strength and endurance is really about maintaining your motivation to continue the practice, to continue taking care of yourself. So the power of no is one of those practices as well. So knowing your limits, knowing when to ask for help so that you don't take on more stress than you are prepared to do. And the program, so how this is conducted with individuals or with groups, is to go through 3 sessions. We have the introductory session that talks a lot about the basics that we covered, the perceive, believe, achieve, the amygdala and prefrontal cortex, and the basic levels of mental fitness, with some of the basic practices. On the back, there are 5 practices under each of those categories. Then the second level, the second session is intermediate. So that's the sense inventory, and that's spelled SENC. So this allows people to, again, raise awareness about what's influencing their brain function, their brain health, their mental function from a neurochemical, neurological perspective. Externally, what are social and environmental influences, and internally, what are nutritional and chemical influences. And we talk about that a whole lot more in the certification program. And then the third session with individuals is applying all that knowledge. This is where the rubber meets the road, applying that knowledge to the goal tracker and scorecard. So that this is where you set a goal, you figure out what practices will help you get to that goal, and really incorporating mental fitness practices. So whether that is spending time with friends, challenging yourself with creativity, taking a class, breathing exercises, getting better quality sleep, eating better, finding those nutritious foods that really can enhance your brain function and brain health. That's where we apply all of those practices towards a certain goal. And then how you reward and reinforce those practices and habits along the way. All right, so this is pretty much the end of the informational session. The quote that I do use for really grasping the importance of mental fitness is that when we dismiss or deny the function of the brain, we prolong the cycle of dysfunction and pain. So again, if we are denying the driver of behavior, we're denying and overlooking what's behind our emotions, what's behind our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. We are not actually addressing the neurochemical and neurological needs that people have to feel and do their best. So this is a really critical time in our human evolution and our human understanding and our human development. With all the science that we now have at our fingertips, with all that we've learned, it's time to use that and really put it in practical ways that can empower people to feel and do their best. So from brain health to brain development, mental function, neurology, neurochemistry, neurodiversity, motivation, and reinforcement, all important to be aware of and understand. So thank you for listening and watching today. If you have any questions, please go to my website at 40fit.net. You can reach me there. I am also on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. This session will likely be posted on YouTube. Feel free to email me if you have questions. But if you are interested in the 40MFC certification program, again, you can go to 40fit.net and look under the brain training tab under get certified and find the request form. So that's the first step in getting certified with 40Fit Mental Fitness. Again, thank you so much. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments or connect to me. Otherwise, here's to you feeling and doing your best and empowering others to feel and do their best too.